And we are live. This is Island Talk Podcast. I'm Niko, host, your host, and the rest of my co-hosts, well, they are not here tonight. It'll just be myself and our special guest this week, Dale Wentworth. Dale, how's it going, my fellow Washingtonian?
It's doing very good. Glad to talk to somebody from Washington State. Usually it's on the opposite side of the country.
Yeah, that's generally how it works for me too. Most everyone I talk to is all West Side. My co-hosts are West Side, and our East Side. So everyone I speak to is generally East Coast. So I almost felt obliged to post the time in West Coast time instead of East, just to accommodate for it. But
Yep.
no, I'm excited. It should be fun.
Yes, it is. It's going to be interesting to talk about this season.
So all right, so we got it, and it looks like should be up and running here. Checking live feed, making sure we're all good to go, and it appears that we are, so that's good. And so we can go ahead and just keep on running. So Dale, just kind of getting an overview of the season, just kind of getting your take on it. What do you think of the season as up to this point?
It's had some highs and lows. It was very slow starting. Some of my favorites didn't pan out. I was a big fan of Joe. And he's kind of disappeared. He's kind of looks like he's doing a kind of Keith, just kind of tell me who to vote for. I mean, in the last couple of weeks, he just kind of disappeared on the strategy side of things. I expected him to play a little bit bigger role. So other than that, the last 2 weeks have been very good. It's really picked up. Sydney and Michelle and Aubrey have really stepped up their game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they've all three of those girls seem to be really on point. I think they did a really good job of working Ty last night. I think they really did a good job of kind of appealing to his person and his emotions, and just kind of who he is. And I give all the credit in the world to Aubrey on that move, because I don't know if I'd even say it was a great move for Ty. It was definitely a savage move. It was a great TV move. But at least in my opinion, I don't know if it was the best strategy move.
It's tough because he was on the bottom of the alliance he was in. So
right.
He went from the bottom of the alliance, but at least he went to more people in the alliance. I mean, Scott and Jason were already planning on taking him out, and they were just being really, bullies to him, basically. That one scene last night where Scott says, no, I don't. He basically said, I don't care what you think. Here's who you need to vote for. And that was the vote turner for Ty. Because he basically, when he did his confessional after, he goes, those guys aren't paying attention to my opinion. They're just telling me what to do. And That was it. Scott, he didn't listen to Ty very much. And that was a game changer. I mean, I think that changed Ty's mind.
Yeah, I definitely think that there was a good chance that he could get cut. I just felt like out of all the opportunities, because I feel like the girls aren't gonna. I think the girls are smart enough to know that they can't take Ty with them to the finals, and I think for the move for them was to break those guys up and to kind of make sure that Ty felt that way. The guys obviously didn't do themselves any favors by acting the way that they're acting, and but I still feel like in the long run, Ty's best chance to make it to the final three outside of like an immunity run would be to stick with the guys, because you never know what's going to happen, week to week. I just feel like those four girls and Joe, I feel like those five are going to be a lot more solid than Ty, because I think the girls are smart enough not to take Ty with them. So I don't know. I feel like even though the guys said that they were going to vote him out at a certain point, I think the guys are still going to keep Ty around a lot longer than the girls are, and I think he'd have a better shot to get closer.
Yeah, Ty's, it could come back to bite him, because who would you, of the final seven that are sitting there right now, who would you want to be sitting next to at the final three? Scott and Jason. By far, that's the only two I want to be sitting with, because it's a slam dunk vote. Now, Audrey, they're going to give her props because she's playing a smart game. Sydney, she's been playing a good game. They're playing a strategic game, and usually a strategic game will get you farther ahead in the jury than being a villain. And Scott and Jason have been dumping the fire, all that sort of stuff. That's going to get no vote from anybody who's left. I mean, they're absolutely going to be hated. Nobody's going to care about them. So those are the ideal people to take to the final three. So, and for that very simple reason, do you think Scott is going to vote for Ty if he's sitting on the final three? I mean, that was a stab in the back.
Depending on who he's there with, but he might not.
Yeah, I mean, depends on who he's sitting there with, but he probably won't vote for Ty because Scott looked Ty right in the face, say, "You going to play your idol?" And Ty looks at him and goes, "Sorry." I mean, that wasn't a blindside. That was a stab in the throat.
Right.
He broke your word right in tribal council in front of everybody. No, I'm not going to vote for you. You're gone. Those things stay with you on the jury for a while. Mm-hmm. And Jason made the same thing in his confessional last night. He goes, "I'm out for revenge now." He basically said, "I don't care if I make it to the final three. My job is to take Ty out."
Right. No, man, I think Ty definitely puts the target on his back. And, Scott, obviously Scott's going to, be pissed at the moment. But he didn't look, angry. He didn't have a big blow up or anything. He played it pretty cool. He played it pretty chill. As much as he, made some bad social moves, after Sydney jumped on him and they did the whole thing with dumping the water, taking out the fire, hiding all the tools. He reacted poorly then. But, I mean, as an athlete, and he was a professional athlete, you'd think he'd be able to, handle it as, not be a sore loser in the long run. So, maybe he won't be as mad at Ty if Ty really does end up playing the best game. If he can navigate his way through the women into the finals. I mean, I still don't know. I mean, I think, like you were saying, I think strategically Ty would have to step up his game in a hurry. To get in, to get some votes strategy-wise, because I think right now Aubrey is in Sydney, and as you were saying, even Michelle are probably playing the better strategy games, especially Aubrey.
Yeah, but I think the next two on the chopping block are going to be Ty and Julia.
Yeah, I agree.
I think, and the only thing in Ty's favor, I mean, it was a beautiful move on his part because he left last night's tribal council with an idol and an extra vote. So even though he's on the chopping block, he can survive one night, and that gives him, on island time, that gives him 4 to 5 days to work his good graces back into some people. So he could deflect the stuff to Julia more than, and the girls would still have an advantage. So he could start playing that. He goes, "Look," he goes, "Julia's been flopping back and forth on the fence longer than I have. Take her out before you do me. Give him an extra day in there. Give him an extra day in, because every day in there, because pretty soon that group of girls and Joe have got to be fighting them against themselves."
Right.
So it's interesting. And like I say, I posted earlier that last week's tribal was a beautiful setup to this week.
Yeah.
The girls did a phenomenal job last week of letting all the guys know they were on the chopping block, and then telling everybody, "We're going to vote for the guys. It's going to be a Ty, Scott, or Jason. We're going to do this and this," and then secretly plot to take out a Debbie. And in the process, they got all the idols to be flushed. They knew who had the idols. They knew there was a super idol in play, even though they didn't know the details. And then, I mean, they knew Jason had one. They knew Ty had one. They knew there's a super idol. They didn't even have to bring him into play. The guys were stupid enough to just say, "Here's my idol. You can't vote me out." So they went ahead and took Debbie out. So this week they turned around. They vote out Scott, who doesn't have an idol. And odds are that neither Ty or Jason was going to give him an idol, because it's very seldom that it's loaned out. And then the guys were planning on playing the super idol. And Ty decided not to play the super idol. So the last two tribal councils have been pretty impressive in the strategy, the way the girls have played. And I'll agree, 80% of it was just blind luck. You didn't know they weren't going to play the super idol. You didn't know the details of this. There's so many things that could have went wrong, because Survivor is so much luck instead of skill. But it worked out great for the girls in the majority.
Yeah, and I mean, and just the other lucky part of it too is the fact that Scott ended up going out of the game with Jason's idol in his pocket. So
Yeah.
all of a sudden, that idol is completely out of the game now. And I mean, the girls don't know that. Presumably, Ty might know because he was sitting there when Jason gave it to him. So I mean, who knows if Ty knows whether or not Scott gave it back or not? But at least at the moment, no one knows that Jason or that Scott went home with Jason's idol. So I mean, Scott or Jason can kind of keep up the act that he might still have the idol. He could use that to his advantage, but it's going to depend on what Ty says. But I mean, that definitely puts. Do you think that puts less if it comes out that Jason doesn't have the idol, that Scott went home with Jason's idol? Do you think that puts more of a target on Jason's back, where they're just going to go and vote him out now, or do you think that there's a chance that it could take a little less of a target off of his back because they may not feel like they got to get him right away? Because now he's unprotected, he's got nowhere to go. Why not target someone that you might not be able to get later?
I think they would go after Jason or Julia, who they know they didn't have an idol. Tell Ty they might be going after him. But Jason, he's won an immunity, and that lingers in people's minds. He's proven he can win immunity. He's tough. So take him out. As soon as he doesn't get immunity, take him out. And
yeah.
If I was Ty, I'd be going back to camp and telling the entire world, Jason gave his idol to Scott, and the idol left the island. He doesn't have it. If he doesn't win immunity, vote him out.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think if Ty's smart, Ty does that. But I feel like if Jason was smart, he wouldn't go back to camp and blow up. If he went back and chilled and kind of laid low and kind of just allowed things to develop around him, you never know, when people start eating each other. But I don't think Jason's capable of that. I feel like he's gonna go back guns blazing, and I think he's gonna keep the target on his back, unfortunately.
Because that's how most of his game has been bolded in your face. Him and Scott's cockiness of the last 2 or 3 weeks is what got him voted out. I mean, you've seen him in the last 2 tribal councils. You're either going to get on the train or you're going to get run over by it. The train's coming through. His cockiness is what caused the trying to flesh the idols last week, and it's what took him down last week. Because after a while, you can't be too cocky on Survivor. Because like Jeff says, the only person who can't get voted out is a person who's got that idol around his neck.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. Even if you have an idol, you can still get voted out, because half the part of having the idol is knowing when to play it. Because you can go back in Survivor history and last night is a perfect example. Scott walked home with one in his pocket. Rocker walked home with one in his pocket from my season. You can go through, and there's a lot of people that's walked home with idols in their pocket, and because they didn't think they were at risk. And every person who should know, whenever you walk in and sit down with that torch, you got more than a 50-50 chance of going home, unless you have an idol around your neck.
Right. So I mean, you can't do that, because I mean, it just draws the attention to you. And it's just foolish to draw any unneeded attention on yourself. The guys already know that they're in trouble. The girls already know that they're going to be targeting them. You don't need to bring the extra attention to yourself, and force their hands. As great as an idea is, they're like, yeah, everyone vote for us. I dare you, because we're going to sneak attack you with the super idol. How about you don't say anything? You catch them by surprise. And you actually just catch them by surprise. You don't blow everything up in their face, and you don't draw the attention, because don't force them to vote for you, because that's just bad game. You don't want votes coming at you no matter what happens. You never know what's going to go wrong.
You don't want to sit there, and that's what the guys have done the last 2 weeks. Is basically, I dare you to vote for us, because that's what Jason was basically saying last night. I dare you to vote for us. There's no way the 3 of us are not going home. I mean, that was literally drawing the line in the dirt. Says, I dare you to try and vote for any one of the 3 of us. It's not going to happen. And you could see Ty's eyes in tribal going, well, guess what? I might change my mind. And I was sitting there talking to my wife. I go, watch, Ty's going to do something. I go, because when Scott told him on the beach, do what I say, that's when Ty started having second thoughts that he was on the bottom end of that alliance. Well, he may as well go to another alliance where he might have an in with the ladies or Joe. There's more people, so he's automatically going to last a little bit longer with a bigger alliance. So he's a vote that can be swayed. Him and Julia are both middle of the road people. They're wild cards, and it's a big target, but they're also a mercenary. They're in there another week for a vote.
Right. Yeah, I mean, if you can play the middle right and you can play the mercenary role right, it can get you deep in the game. But at the same time, you really don't have any loyalty either coming your way. And so it's definitely a dangerous line to walk because, anytime, any moment, any time you can get clipped. Because, if you don't have any loyalty built up with anybody, the mercenary role can only take you so far. So it's I don't know. It'll be interesting. I don't think the Ty. I think if Ty gets into the finals, I think he can win. I just don't think Ty's going to make it to the finals. I think his best shot still was with those guys. Because I think it's better to be in the bottom of a 3-person alliance than to be, a potential bottom of a 4 or 5-person alliance.
Well, yeah, I think Joe, Jason, and Ty. I think it's going to be an all-girl alliance or all-girl final 3. Yeah. I really do. I don't think Joe's going to be there. Eventually, they're going to take him out because he's just there for a vote now. You haven't heard him talk any strategy to anybody. He just last night
didn't even have a confessional last night.
Yeah, he's reminding me a lot of, I hate to say it, the guy I love to hate is Keith, where he just walks into the camp once a day and say, "Who do you want me to vote for?" And Michelle goes, "We're voting for this." Okay, and you don't see Joe again. And I like Joe. He was one of my favorites going in. I didn't know if it was win just because of his age, but I like the old guys for some strange reason. But after the first couple weeks, he's kind of faded, and he's not playing near the strategic game that I could. Jason, he's actually playing a lot stronger game than what I could. I'm surprised he's lasted this far, being the bull in the china closet. Ty, him and Julia both, they've been flopping back and forth too many times. And like you say, they aren't building up trust on either side. Last night was a perfect example. Ty's ruined the amount of trust between him and Jason. So now he's got to go to the girls, but the girls already mistrust him because he's already been with Ty and Scott for so long. So he's got to rebuild trust, and late in the game it's tough to rebuild trust. So maybe if they can loop somebody else in, if there's a bunch of votes for Audrey, can they loop her in against the Sydney, Michelle, Joe? There's different ways. Julia, there's different ways you can tie it in. So there's new alliances that can be built each week too.
Right, and we still got to factor in. This is something that we talked about when we met up back a couple months ago, and was the potential for a third medevac, because supposedly there might be a third medevac. And we're down to what, 6 people, 7 people now?
Yep.
And that can still mess up the game. That can completely throw out someone's strategy, and. So, if that comes into fruition, you got to factor that in. That can kind of ruin everyone's plans.
Yep, and you notice Audrey's still wearing a pretty good-sized bandage around her thigh.
Yeah.
And she was one, let's see, I think that was the only person left. Ty's was doing most of the ones they showed that night when Neil got medevaced out. Most of the other ones have taken care of themselves. I think Audrey was the one with the worst, but she's wearing a buff around her upper thigh last night where she had that thing lanced and then a bandage. So that's still an issue, and it very well could come up and change the game once again. Because, yes, there was supposedly, depends on who you listen to and read, there was 3 medevacs from the game. So,
so coming down to the end, I just have it kind of just in the back of my mind that, the game looks like this right now, but, all of a sudden someone just gets plucked out of the game and everything gets messed up again. Or momentum could be changing, something could be happening, and all of a sudden, boom, Jason gets pulled out of the game, and then the girls just run it. It could be, or one of the girls gets picked, and all of a sudden there's an opening, and Jason or the tie, or it can completely change everything.
And it could be a medevac as simply as somebody getting hurt too.
Yeah. I mean, it could be something like that.
Before it's been okay. There's been just the cysts and all that sort of stuff. Just the conditions have been doing it, but it could be an injury from the game that caused it. So, and that could be just about anybody. So, and I'd be leaning. Well, I don't know. Injuries can happen to anybody at any time. Just depends on the challenge. So, I'm surprised with Audrey. She has really changed her game around from where she was in the first day or so. She was crying her eyes out. She was overwhelmed and this sort of stuff. And now all of a sudden, her and Sydney last night, Sydney was a soft night. But before that, Sydney's been playing an extremely strong game. She's my pick to win. After the merge, Sydney was my pick to win.
Yeah, and Aubrey's been, she's been coming on strong these last few weeks. I feel like she's been getting a confessional seemingly like every 30 seconds.
Yep.
The last couple of weeks, they've been just dumping Aubrey on us. So I'm trying to figure it out. Is it because she's the obvious winner at this point, or is she gonna get pulled from the game, and is it gonna be one of those things where she's just totally just running it, and then out of all of a sudden just boom, she's gone.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like she's been getting a ton of confessionals because, I mean, outside of her, Scott and Ty were the only two left in the game up until last night that had a confessional every single week. And up until when Debbie was voted out, she had a confessional every week. And now the last couple of weeks, we've lost Debbie, we've lost Scott. So Ty's the only guy left who's had at least one confessional every week. In last season, when you go through the season, I think it was that Kelly had at least a confessional every episode. Jeremy had one, and I believe Spencer. I think the three of them were the only three people who had at least one confessional all the way up into the finale. And so it's going to be interesting to see because when we kind of started noticing the trends with confessional wise, it looked like, if it goes by how it kind of went last season, we're going to have a Debbie Scott tie final 3, and that just sounds insane.
Yeah, it does. Of course, Debbie was getting confessionals just because she's insane. Just sheer TV gold.
Yeah.
She didn't usually anything she said didn't make a damn bit of sense. It's just that she was just, I can see exactly why she got picked to be on the show. And number one, she lasted longer, but I mean, she was just a pinball ricocheting around. She reminded me of Phillip in a bikini because just the way she would go over the top trying to get an alliance, just walk back in, walk right up to somebody, say, "You're in my alliance. I'm going to shake your hand. And if you don't shake my hand, well, then you're dead." And that's kind of how Phillip would do it, and it's just amazing the way she could play the game and got away with it. And so she was good TV. I mean, plus every time they showed her, she had a different job. She must have been 30 different jobs.
Kudos to the editors and the producers on that one.
Yes.
That was always fantastic. But no, I agree. And I mean, I think this season is edit-wise is very different than, previous seasons. I feel like they're doing their best to hide the winner. Because like we said, the winner isn't going to be someone who's had a confessional in every episode unless it's Ty, and I don't think Ty's going to win. I think it's going to be one of the women.
They've pushed it too strong. Just from a lot of the other stuff, they've pushed the women's alliance. You started hearing the women's alliance too early in the season. It's too strong. The women's have got too much of a lock on the game.
Yeah,
I mean, it's 4-3, and Julia's even talked about it. And unless the three guys got together, and I do not see Joe, Jason, and Ty, Lincoln and Julia to take out the Audrey, Sydney, and Michelle alliance. That's the only way it's going to work. And Joe and Michelle are too tight. And because he's voted with her since day one, since they first got there. So I don't see that happening. I just don't see the guys being able to last. They just don't have the numbers. And they're too far down on the alliances. It's basically Ty and Ty and Jason against everybody else now. If Ty and Jason was to go back together.
Right, and I mean, I don't think that's going to happen. I think at least if Jason's got any kind of hope left in the game, it's more than likely going to be Julia. And it's going to probably have to take an immunity run, and maybe if maybe they throw another idol back in on the island. Maybe he finds an idol since they're not quite at Final Five yet. You never know. When so many idols go out of the game, occasionally get thrown back. But Ty still does have one, so there's a chance they won't put one back in there.
Usually they won't put another idol until one is actually played.
Until one is played, or until there's just none left in play.
Yeah, and so as long as there's one still in play, because there was 3, one with each tribe.
Right.
Neil took one out, and his didn't get replaced. Scott took one out, it didn't get replaced. So history has always shown until there's, like say, none left, or till somebody plays. As soon as one is played, then another one comes out. To always keep up until they time to get the final 6 or 7, something like that. So, and that could be in the next 1 to 2 episodes. Ty's got to play his idol awful quick, or there's not going to be any more idols come into play.
Right, and my only thought of why they could put one in is how badly does production want to see a super idol played? If they want that to happen, there has to be another idol in place. So that's my one thought on why this season could be a slight exception, because if production wants to see this, super idol potentially played, they've got to get another idol in play.
But see, there's already strictly they're going to run out of time. There's 7 people left as of last night, and Ty's got 2 idols. Basically, he's got his one idol, and then he's got a extra vote idol, so he can call it an idol, like Dan had in Worlds Apart. So all of a sudden, if there's both of those played on different nights, that takes it down to the final 5, and that's if he plays them back to back, that takes him to the final 5, and that's when idols the last time he can play any idols. So they're probably going to run out of time trying to put one in, unless they just literally drop one in somebody's lap. By the time they're going to have to put one in a reward challenge, sneak one in, not sneak one in, but get a clue in there for somebody to find it, bring it into play. Just time-wise, it's going to be awful tough for it. I'm not saying it can't be done, but the super idol already came into play from production standpoint because the 3 guys were betting the farm on the super idol last night. And they knew about it. Nobody else knew about it. And you saw all the looks go back and forth in tribal. And when Ty didn't play it, that was almost as good as the idol being played, because the suspense of the idol being played was better than it not being played, or better than it being played. Because Jason and Scott were going, no, the super idol's got to be played. That's why they didn't play their individual idols. So it would have been interesting if Ty would have played that super idol. I mean, if you want to go on what ifs, if Ty would have decided to do that, that would have taken all the idols out of the game.
True. As in, like, just as if the vote played out the way that it played out last night, or if he stuck with.
If the vote would have played out the way it was supposed to be, and Scott would have said, play your idol, because the only way the super idol plays together, you have to join them together as one and give them to Jeff. So both immunity idols would have been pulled out of the game.
Right, I meant like if the vote would have went the same way, if Ty would have went with them. Because if the vote goes the same way, then Ty can't give him that idol, because Scott gets saved and then Ty goes home.
Who had the vote? Was it Audrey or Ty with the votes?
Well, let me think, because Ty had a couple votes and Aubrey had 2 votes. And then they do a revote, and then the girls would vote out Ty, not Aubrey.
Yeah. Because Scott would have been safe. I can't remember how the votes went. It was 4-2.
I believe it was 4-2-2.
Oh, okay.
Because Ty voted 5. So if for some reason Ty all of a sudden felt guilty, decides to save Scott and not thinking about it, then it's 2 votes Aubrey and 2 votes Ty. 2 votes Ty. The guys vote for Aubrey again, and then all the girls
would have
vote
went after
for
Ty.
would have went after Ty, and Ty would have went home. So I mean,
Yeah.
obviously at that point, he already voted against Scott, so he's not going to say it's Scott,
Yeah.
unless he gets an immediate guilty conscience. But no, in the situation where he votes with them,
Yeah.
and he could have found a way to where if they could have swung Julia somehow, they could have done a 4-4, and Ty could have used his vote doubler. If we really want to get fan fictiony,
Oh yeah.
not had to use their idols at all, and knocked out Aubrey on a 5-4 vote.
Yeah,
and then still kept the idols.
That would have, he could have just used his extra vote, and Aubrey would have went home last night.
And then they don't have to play their idols.
Yeah.
They're still stuck, and then they're completely running the game. And then that foursome of Julia and Ty and Jason and Scott runs the game down to the final four.
Yeah, it goes up to a 4-3 vote or a 4-3 alliance, and they could have ran it. And so, yeah, that would have been interesting. But anyhow, that if would have, should have, could have.
Yes, and nuts are candy and butts. Oh, Merry Christmas.
But like say, it was interesting. So in a way, the Super Idol did come into play because that's what Jason and Scott were counting on. And that's why they were so confident. That's how for 2 weeks, that's how their game was set up. We got a Super Idol. You can't touch us. In Survivor, anybody can be touched because you have to trust too many people to go along with your plan. And Ty decided to throw a wrench in their works.
Yeah, and it totally boned them.
Yeah.
But that's the game sometime. So I wanted to jump into a few of our questions that we got here on Twitter. And hopefully to our fan who messaged on YouTube saying my mic was a little bit too loud. Hopefully I tuned that down a little bit, so hopefully I'm not as loud. So one of the questions was from Malcolm Jr. And he said, "What did you guys think of the reward challenge?" And I thought the reward challenge was cool. The way they kind of set it up to where you could win love, you could win food, you could win the advantage. I like the way they set it up. What do you think about the challenge? It's the first time we've seen something like that.
Yeah, it's the first time, so it was rather unique. You saw some people who, the people who were more comfortable in the game, the people who were more worried about their, if you're comfortable, you're going for food. So you could see Jason and Scott or love. Julia, it's tough that late in the game to not think about food or an immunity idol or, but she might not have felt strong enough to win. So she might have just went up, I'll just try for the love one, just for the simple fact that, Joe probably knew he wasn't going to do it. So it's kind of weird how it all played out. The youngest and the oldest went for the love. And all the middle ones went for advantage or nourishment. And the two big guys went for food. And Michelle knew she was safe. Everybody else went for the advantage in the game. The people who've been playing the game the hardest all went for the advantage. Audrey, Jason, Sydney, they all went to just gain an advantage in the game. So, but yeah, it was interesting. I'd never seen him do that before because it basically split it and went back to 3 tribes.
Oh no, Jason went for the food. Ty went for the advantage. Because Ty won the advantage.
Yeah. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I was thinking I was going back. I was going to the immunity idol.
Yeah. They kind of meshed together a little bit.
Yeah, they kind of met. Yeah. So.
It was Jason and Scott Michelle went for food, and then Aubrey, Ty, and Sydney went for the advantage.
Went for the advantage, yes. Yeah, I got the immunity and the reward mixed up.
I know I had them in my head too mixed up, and I was thinking because they're standing there the whole time in line. Yeah. So a little bit confusing with it, but no, I was thinking the same thing. Like, wait, no, Jason went for food, so I had to think about it for a second there. But no, it was a cool challenge. I wouldn't mind seeing some challenge similar to that. Future seasons, because it kind of makes you kind of puts out where your mind's at to the other players. And, it also gives you an opportunity to kind of choose what you want to do.
Like I say, it lets everybody know a little bit more of their standing in the game. Like I say, it's interesting. Joe and Michelle both chose the love rather than food or reward. So they're either Julie's been playing the game, so I can't say she's checked out. Joe seems like he's just trying not to be noticed.
He's just there, right?
Yeah, he's trying not to be noticed. He know if he decided to go for the reward or the advantage, okay, he's still in the game. We don't want him around. Julia might have just been doing it not to be noticed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, just take a step back. Try not to be, you know, like right now it's at this stage of the game, Survivor's like whack-a-mole. Whoever sticks their head up the farthest usually gets hit the hardest. So you try not to be noticed, which is what the guys did in the last 2 weeks. So Julia might be trying to take a step back so she's not so noticed.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that especially just because she'd gotten a little bit of heat, you know, the previous days for, you know, playing sides. So, I mean, I think it's a good move on her side to kind of, you know, take a chill pill a little bit and just go, all right, I'm just going to go over here, get my letters, pretend I'm not here, la-di-da.
Yeah.
No, so, I mean, yeah, no, I agree. I think she
she
made the right move.
They didn't even show Joe reading his letter. Oh, he didn't win. He didn't win.
He didn't get one because he didn't win. Yeah.
He didn't win. So, Joe, he needs to step up his game.
Yeah, if he's got any shot, if he's gonna have any chance, he's gonna have to step it up.
He's gonna have to go off like firecrackers real quick.
Yeah, go off like he did on Peter. Otherwise, there ain't gonna be any fire left for him. I think Joe's locked in to go out at Final 5.
Yeah, so, he's going to be a Keith. He's going to be around for a vote, but you don't want us to be sitting next to him because he hasn't made anybody mad.
Right.
The final 3, you don't want him around. Take him to the Final 5, Final 4, then dump him because he's just an extra vote. You know.
Yeah. But I mean, I think the girls could drag him in there. You know, I think, you know, if Aubrey or Sydney, you know, are sitting next to Joe, I don't think Joe's going to really get a lot of votes.
No, because anymore the players are too, well, I don't know, different seasons or different things. I won't say all seasons because our season was different. Anymore, it seems like the more strategic players are getting rewarded. You know, even villains like Tony, he got rewarded because he was, even though he was a villain, he played a masterful game at being a villain. And he got rewarded for it, which was one of the very first times a villain actually won the game. So as long as you play a very strategic game, you can still win, even if you make a few people mad, because they don't like to admit it to themselves now, but all 7 of those people know there's only one person going to win. And now it's going to be, I'm going to stab you before you get a chance to stab me. So who do I turn on first? And after they get a chance to sit back in Ponderosa and think about it a little bit, say, okay, I can see why he did it. I might not agree with it, but it was a good strategic move. So you can reward somebody else for being basically smarter than you was.
Yeah, that's why I think that, you know, taking Joe to the finals isn't a terrible idea. Just because, you know, what did he do? Why would you vote for him?
Yeah.
You know, maybe if he's sitting there with Scott and Jason, maybe he gets a couple of votes for being the least, you know, the least offensive. But even then, I don't know if he wins because he still didn't do anything.
No, like I say, those guys have been out there. Even though they've been bold and obnoxious in their moves, they've been making some very good moves. Scott, I'll give him credit. He knew Ty had an idol, and he didn't tell anybody. He knew Ty and Jason both had an idol, and he didn't tell anybody for quite a long time. I mean, that was great on his part to keep that quiet. Then after the merge, everybody knew everybody had an idol, so the secrets went out. But Scott was playing a pretty good game until they decided to dump the rice and hide the hatchets and all that sort of stuff. And there's a lot of different ways they could have handled that one.
Yeah, and that was probably towards the bottom of the list.
Yeah, that was the worst you could do. They say, I'm at the bottom of it, so I'm going to make the people in the majority mad at me. Well, that never works out good.
Yeah, they already want to vote me out. What can I do to increase those chances?
Yes, let's throw dirt on my grave.
Yeah. So I got a couple questions here from our friends over at Survivor Shade. I know you've done a little bit of work with them. And so we got Joe over at Survivor Shade throwing a couple questions at you. And so the first one was Ty's refusal in the top 5 shadiest tribal council moments?
That was pretty. It was pretty good. I'm not going to rank it up there with Kelly's idol play of getting Savage out, but that was pretty good. The smallest guy on the island at the biggest guy on the island, just basically putting a finger in his nose and going, "Not tonight, big boy. You're going home." I mean, that was a pretty good in-your-face, ultimate shade moment of just that was pretty good at Ty. And he goes, "I'm sorry," you know.
And he really does. I don't even think he says anything. Like, he just straight looks at him, and Scott's like, "Are you not going to? Are you gonna give it to me?
And
Seriously?"
it's just the smallest.
And Ty the whole time is like, just stares at him like.
I think they ad-libbed it in, says, "Nope, I'm sorry, but it was just a small head shake, just kind of like, you talking to me?"
Yeah, exactly.
So that was a pretty good moment, because I could just imagine the feeling of Scott was just the elevator fell out of a 50-story building, just like, "I'm going home right now."
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine what his stomach was doing at that moment when Ty's just like, "I don't know what you're looking at me for."
Yeah, and Jason on the backside was looking at him going, "We had a plan." "No,
right.
You guys had a plan. I wasn't in on the plan." So that was pretty good. I'll give Ty all the props in the world, because that was a very, very huge move.
Yeah, it was a huge move. Was it the best move? Maybe not, but it was a huge move for sure. And the other question, talking about the move, also from Joe over at Shade, is one more. Who should get the most credit, the biggest credit for Ty's move? Aubrey, Sydney, or Ty himself?
I think I'll answer it in two ways. Most of the blame goes to Scott, because there's that one point, and like I say, depending on the edit, how you want to look at that one point when him and Jason and Ty are standing on the beach, and Ty comes up, and he was trying to get him to vote for Aubrey, I think. Or was it Sydney? I can't remember who is the one Ty came up with an idea.
In the water?
What's that?
When they were sitting in the water?
They were sitting in the water, and Ty came up with an idea to vote somebody out, and I can't remember if it was Aubrey.
Yeah, Aubrey came to them. Aubrey had talked to Ty and was talking. I think he said they wanted to vote for. She said she would work with them, and I can't remember if she said she wanted to vote Sydney or Julia, one of the two. It might have been Sydney, or it might have even been Julia. And I think so. They were going to vote for Sydney. The guys were, and then when Ty goes back and said, "Hey, Aubrey said she wants to work with us," they immediately said, "Hey, we should vote at Aubrey."
Yeah, and that was Scott, and it just basically, he just steamrolled Ty's idea. He didn't even pay attention to it. He just steamrolled. He just kind of bullied him into it. Says, "No, here's how we're going to vote. You're part of my alliance." And the look on Ty's face, because he did a confessional, and it could have been before or after. He goes, "The guys don't listen to me anymore." He goes, "I'm on the bottom end of this alliance, and it's not going to last too long." And so the blame goes to Scott, but the credit has to go for Ty, because he's the only one who he was the one who made the final decision not to play that super idol.
Right. And so, I mean, I don't know. I feel like I give the credit for, helping sway him a little bit. I mean, I definitely give some credit to Aubrey for, being persistent and staying in Ty's ear. And so, I mean, I don't think I give any credit to Sydney on that, because it really looked like it was really Aubrey who was doing the work. But I mean, I do agree. I think Scott didn't do himself any favors. Jason didn't do himself any favors. But I mean, I completely get where Scott was coming from in that moment. When they're sitting there, I think he could have handled it better instead of immediately shutting it down. But from Scott's point of view, when you're looking at someone like Aubrey, who's clearly running the other alliance, and she comes up to Ty, who Scott probably knows isn't the most emotionally stable, just the way that he's in the game. Scott's gonna know, okay, Aubrey's coming to you knowing that you're gonna be the easiest one to manipulate, because you're gonna play more emotionally than myself, and the two of us, obviously, we're not gonna switch. So the minute he hears that Aubrey wants, is going to Ty, he's probably immediately thinking in his head, oh crap, we need to get Aubrey out now because Aubrey's trying to dig her claws into Ty. And Ty just says, oh, you're just not listening to me. But I completely get where Scott's coming from. I just think he didn't handle it very well.
Yeah, and for that point on Scott, he likes to think, him and Jason both like to think they've been in control of the game. The guys, they've got the 2 idols, they've got the super idol. They've broadcasted for 2 or 3 weeks. We can't be touched. We're in control of the game. If he would have conceded to Ty's idea, look, Aubrey came to me, we wanted to vote, he would have been conceding some of his control to the Women's Alliance. And I don't think he was willing to do that. That's why he goes, no. Right. He goes, I'm the biggest guy on the island. We're controlling the game. They can't vote us out. So I think that's where his ego, as much as anything, is what took him down. He was unwilling to listen to anybody's opinion.
But is he thinking that way because he just doesn't trust that Aubrey is actually going to? Because the girls were initially going to vote for Ty. Yeah. Their plan was to try to get Ty, off of just to get the the idols out of play, just to kind of mess it up. They were trying to get him to play an idol. So I think Scott knew that Aubrey was just blowing smoke and wasn't really going to vote with those guys. And I mean, I think that's why. That's why I think he wasn't going to give up control. He's like, well, why would we go along with what Aubrey and them want to do when they're more than likely full? They're full of it. So I mean, but I completely agree. I think even if the opportunity were to come where Aubrey would have legitimately wanted to try to come with them, I don't think he's going to relinquish the power.
I don't think
either
that.
Of them. I agree.
I don't think he trusted Aubrey. He wasn't going to trust anything coming from the Girls Alliance, whether they were in control or not, because obviously it was Scott and Jason and Ty against the 3 girls, the Michelle, Sydney, and Aubrey. Those are the 2 tribes of 3 that are controlling the alliances right now, and they were trying to take control. So however he would have played it, he could have played it a little bit better to keep Ty in the camp. Whether or not you ever trust Aubrey or not is one thing, but by the way he played it, he alienated Ty instantly, and it cost him the game. If he would have listened to Ty and says, okay, for 1 vote, we'll do it, just to get us a little bit farther in the game, he probably could have kept Ty in the game, or he probably could have kept himself in the game another night. Just to say, well, we'll trust her for once. So
yeah, and I like the way that Scott. I don't know if you got a chance to listen to or read anything of Scott's exit press.
Not yet.
But I listened to his interview that he did with Rob, and I like the way that he phrased it, where he was talking about how I didn't think that Ty was. I didn't feel like we were not listening to Ty or not taking what Ty was saying, but the fact that Ty felt that way makes it truth, whether I felt that way or not.
Yes.
So, and I like the fact that he had the awareness of saying, we didn't feel like we were ignoring him. We thought we were taking what he was saying, but Ty didn't feel that way. And so because Ty didn't feel that way, we weren't doing, what we should have been doing to make him feel that way. And that's our bad. So, I mean, I think Scott did a good job, at least in that fact that he kind of owned up that, yeah, we messed up on that. We may not have noticed it, but that doesn't make it any less true.
Yeah. And like I say, it comes down to that Survivor edit, how they actually came out, how everything happens. And one of the best quotes I ever saw was Tony after he won his season. He said when he was in the game, while he was controlling the game, he goes, I knew 90% of what was happening on the beach. Every conversation, I did this. He goes, I was aware of 90% that was going on. After he got back and saw it on TV, and I don't know if it was one of his exit interviews or something like that, but he goes, actually, I actually watched the show. He goes, I realized that I only had maybe 10% of the information in my hand. And so Scott, and my point is, for Scott's interview, that interview was done almost a year after everything took place.
Right.
So you had a time to coach your interview, your exit interview,
right?
according to what you've seen and stuff. So, but and like I say, the editing, they probably took out some of the moments where Scott and Ty did get along. Say, okay, I agree with your point of view. I got to do this and this, but here's my decision, and that's the only one that makes the air.
Right.
So
yeah, and I mean, and I feel like they probably did have conversations because I mean, you see Scott and Ty, you know, when they were away from Jason, you know, they developed a relationship. You know, there was like the big dude and the little dude. You know, the perfect little buddy comedy.
Yep.
You know, and so I mean, you did see that they had a good relationship out there on the island. You know, it seemed that way at least. And you know, and Scott said, you know, we'd go have walks on the beach every day, and we just the two of us go talk, even without Jason. So he's like, you know, I felt like we were solid, but hey, you know, he still stabbed me in the back. It is what it is.
Yep.
So,
at some point, it's a game, and
yeah.
you're trying to win $1 million. And in Ty's opinion, at that moment, his best option was to cut Scott loose.
Right.
And it's easy to look back on it a year later. At the time, Scott probably steamed quite a bit, but that's the beauty of the game, I guess.
Yeah, so we got another question here from at Rob's Taboo Buzzer, saying with Jason being totally neutered and a perfect endgame goat, what is the play to get Ty to use his idol and his advantage by Final 5?
Man, I could see Julia now that I could see Julia and Jason teaming up and getting another one of the girls to get after Ty. Because, like, say, Jason, if I was Jason right now, my pitch to the remaining 6 people, of everybody here, who do you want to sit next to at Tribal Council?
Right.
I'm the perfect person to sit next to. If you sit next to me, if it's a final 2 or final 3, we haven't really determined if it's going to be a final 2 or 3. He goes, but if I'm one of those 2 or 3 people sitting at the tribal, goes, I'm only getting 2 or 3 votes because I pissed off everybody on the jury.
Yeah, if that. Yeah, he might get Scott. He might get Nick.
Yeah, and so for that, he's got a really good chance of making it to the final 3 now because he could be the strictly mercenary. He's all by himself. You know, he's lost alliance. He's got Julia, but he's lost alliance with Ty. So he's a perfect guy to make a new alliance. So does he want to work with Aubrey now and Michelle and go against Sydney? You know, there's a lot of ways he could play it. So he would be a perfect person to take the final 3.
So how would you then think for, and we don't even have to look at it for Jason, we can look at it for just the other players out there in general. What would you say would be the best way to get Ty, you know, playing his idol? I mean,
if
he's got the idol, he's got the advantage. How do you get those out?
I would be going to tell everybody there's only one idol left in play and it's time to flesh it out. You don't want that idol to be sitting around come to the final 5. And everybody knows Ty's got one. Ty's going to go around and say one went home with Jason. Well, Jason, he's already said he's out for vengeance. And the only thing an idol for is good right now is if nobody knows you have it. And everybody knows Ty's got it. And it's better to control its play. And if you can't control the play of the idol, you're going to go home. And so the best way to do it is to convince Ty, everybody on the island, say, you're going home tonight unless you play that thing. And
and Jason could use that to his advantage, the fact that his idol's gone. Because now he's less of a threat.
He's no threat. He goes, there's only one person out here. He goes, unless you win an immunity, there's only one person who won't go home is Ty. And the quicker you get that idol out, then it's a level playing field. And so I could easily see Ty being the one on the chopping block next week. Not saying he's going to be the one to go home.
Right.
But
maybe the girls and let's say the girls and Joe, they split it maybe 3-2 on Ty and Jason. Put 3 on Ty, 2 on Jason.
Or
you know,
I'd do 3-2 and go on Julia.
Oh yeah, you could do Julia too. I mean,
because she's been siding with the guys.
Yeah, maybe have I don't know if Michelle does it. Maybe Aubrey and Sydney and Joe they vote for, or those 3 vote for. I mean they can work it out how they work it out.
Yeah, you got.
I mean you can split the votes, force Ty to vote someone out. Play his idol, and still have one of their main alliance not go home. Because even if there's a 2-2 revote, they're going to have the majority to force the vote their way.
Yeah, they could do it. So I could see they know Jason's on the outs. And right now,
because he's got nowhere to go now.
I'd be looking at him to sit on the final 3 with. So you might not want to, you want to drag him deep in the game. So I'd be saying, you want to get back a Ty? So let's go vote Ty out. Let's get rid of Ty. You're going to last longer than him. Let's get rid of the idol. Then you split the vote between him and Julia. And, get Ty to play his idol. Ty's still around, but at least then Julia would go. And those Julia and Jason are the 2 of the people, or all 3 of those been floating back and forth between alliances. Mm-hmm. So they can't be trusted too much.
Yeah, and I think Jason's worst enemy, trying to get into the finals is going to be himself.
Yep.
I feel like, he should have a good shot to get to the final 3 simply because they should want to sit next to him. I think his biggest issue is he going to become so unbearable and so obnoxious at camp that they'll just vote him out anyway simply because they don't want to be around him. If he can make himself less obnoxious, less hard to be around at camp, and if he can just kind of chill a little bit, and I just don't think he can do that. I don't think it's in his personality. But if he can find a way to tone himself down a little bit, I think it could almost guarantee him a spot in the final 3. I just think that his personality is just going to, and his ego are just not going to allow him to, take back seat a little bit. I think he's just going to go full throttle, and I think that's why he could get clipped and not make final 3.
That would be it if hopefully last night's tribal clipped his wings a little bit.
Yeah.
And makes him up to realize, because all of a sudden it's 1 against 5, him and Julia, 2 against 5 right now. So maybe that'll be a wake-up pill, or he's just going to go down in flames. Of course, even if he gets to be just so unbearable, they just ignore him. He's just one person. Yeah. Just completely ignore him, because he's going to make every single person around camp mad. And the more you make them around camp mad, there's only going to be half of the ones around camp are going to end up on the jury, and they're going to be just as mad at him on the jury as they are around camp. And somebody who goes off handle, you don't want to put him in the jury and contaminate the jury pool either.
Right, that's true.
Because he can sit in there and be a complete idiot in the jury pool and contaminate votes against all sorts of people. So you keep your enemies close, you keep your friends close, but you keep your enemies closer.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you do take out Jason, take him out at 4, where he's only maybe got, a day to be in there.
Yeah.
So when can he do the least amount of damage?
Yeah, and I think the least amount of damage is sitting on day 39. I mean, it's going to be brutal for him to swallow, because eventually because he's going to be a great mercenary vote. He's going to be Aubrey and Michelle can use him to take out Sydney. Mm-hmm. He doesn't like Sydney, so that's a vote sitting out there. So I don't know. It's interesting at this stage of the game.
Yeah, I feel like the whole group is and Joe from Survivor Shade just messaged and wanted to know, told me to ask Dale if he's letting his hashtag inner bitch out.
That was supposed to be a secret, Joe. I can't mention that.
So
that was pretty good.
Loving Joe from Shade.
Yeah.
Joe's a friend of the show for sure.
That was pretty good. Not yet, Joe. Maybe the next time I do the Shade on Joe's show, I'll keep it in check on this one.
release the hashtag inner bitch. Yeah. Maybe next time. This show's not quite as rowdy as it tends to get on here.
No, it's not as bad as I can only do so many shades before one's enough. I'll have to wait and see before I do another one.
Well, let's see. So I actually had a question for you. So you were down, and this isn't even related to the episode. So you were down at Reality Rally.
Yes.
So first, I just want to ask, how was that? How was the event itself?
It was fun. I mean, it started off just amazing. My roommate for the weekend was Richard Hatch.
And that was my second question. How was that?
I had never met Richard. I mean, from the very first guy on the show. I mean, it was very. Richard was a great guy. I mean, you find out. I mean, when I opened up the door to the room, I slid the key card in the door and I cracked the door a little bit. And I go, okay, clothes or no clothes? And he goes, you can leave your clothes on. So that's how I started my conversation with Richard. But Richard and I got along great. He's a very great guy. We had some good conversations. So the whole rally was fun. I mean, I'd recommend everybody. It's a heck of a cause. Jillian puts on a heck of a show. Doing the Amazing Race type stuff around town. There's 14 different check stops you have to go through. The whole town gets involved into it. Somewhere in Southern California, there's a lady I had to propose to, and she accepted my proposal of marriage, and I ran out of town the next day. So, but it was a fun time. I mean, the whole thing was just a blast.
And so, yeah, it looked like it was fun, and that's something that I'd love to go down and go do some time and try to get the rest of my guys to find a way to get down there and get involved with that. And we've tried to get involved a little bit, at least in terms of like raising funds and money, you know, for the Give Kids the World down in Florida.
Yeah.
And are you going to be heading down to Florida for that, or?
No, I don't think so. This was just Jillian kind of bent my arm down at Kelly's finale and talked me into it. The team that I did race with down in Temecula wants me to come back next year, so we'll have to see that. I don't know. This was my first rally, so I'll see how it goes. Big Brother Canada is represented extremely strong at that event. I was surprised. It's the first time Jordan from Big Brother Canada.
Yeah.
I met him. Pinhart. I can't remember.
Jordan Parhar?
Yes.
Yeah.
We sat around and told stories till the wee hours of the morning Saturday night. That's the first time I'd met him, and he's a great guy.
Yeah, obviously I haven't met him, but he does a lot of podcasting with Rob. So he's put himself out there quite a bit. And he's just from the sounds of him, he's very, very, very smart in terms of strategy and, you know, the gameplay himself. But he sounds like he's a pretty good dude.
Yeah, we had a good time. First time I'd actually got around to hanging out with one of the Big Brother people. So him and Kelly and I sat around and we shared some stories late Saturday night.
Very cool, very cool. So it looks like we really don't have any more questions on the episode, and so I mean we can start to wrap things up here.
Okay.
Moving forward. So moving forward, we did have one question left, and we kind of talked about it, you know, just touching on pieces throughout the show. Just you basically said you got Sydney as your winner pick.
Yes.
Moving forward, and so one of the questions, and it's kind of relating to that a little bit, is so of the remaining 7, who do you think's played the best game so far this season? Do you feel that Sydney's played the best game up to this point, or do you feel this by the end of the game she'll have played the best game?
Right now I'm thinking the person who's played the best game, and I'm not going to change people I'm backing. Aubrey has played the best game because she came in with the brains being, I mean, the Brains tribe was after the merge, they were on the low end of the totem pole.
Right.
And she's played it into, she's just stepped up her game in the immunity challenge. I mean, she hung in there right with Jason. She's really playing a phenomenal game right now. She's playing the strongest game of all of them so far. I'm still going to back Sydney, but man, it's going to be hard. It'd be hard to bet against Aubrey right now.
Yeah, I mean Aubrey seems like the odds-on favorite, at least, you know, from what we're seeing on the show. And but I don't know. I mean, who knows? You know, everything can change. We've seen, you know, like when you go back to like South Pacific, no one really saw Sophie coming until the last second.
Yep, and
So,
that's
I mean,
why we did a podcast. Kelly and I and Sierra and Joe and Varner, and they all picked Michelle. Everybody had Michelle as a dark horse. Just kind of, she's been playing a good game, kind of under the radar type. And like we mentioned earlier, there's that next medevac that's still hanging out there.
Right.
I still think the two stars of this season is going to be the medevac helicopter and the damn chicken. You know,
right.
the damn chicken named Mark.
And the chicken might die next week.
Yeah.
Jason has anything to say about it.
Yeah, once Ty's gone, they're going to kill it. The chicken's looking pretty skinny on feathers. He's losing feathers. So
I was cracking up. If you did you listen to Richard's podcast last week with Rob, where he was suggesting that Scott and Jason should threaten Ty, but with the chicken, saying that if he doesn't go with him, then he should kill the chicken. And then now we're getting like a confessional of Jason saying they're going to kill the chicken to get back at Ty. I just thought that was hilarious that he said they should do that, and like a week later we're getting confessionals.
Hold the chicken hostage, and then the next thing you know, we're going to get a confessional from the damn chicken. While I was held hostage, here's what.
Yeah. So no, Mark the chicken's been getting more airtime than Joe has this season.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So.
And all right, so we're gonna wrap this up. So looking toward next week. Next Tuesday or Monday, depending on if my cohorts, Dylan and Dan, if they can actually get their shit together for once and get one of our Tuesday shows going. We should hopefully have a Survivor and Chill next Tuesday. And then at the moment, we've got no guests lined up for Thursday, but we're seeing what we can work. We'll have a show on Thursday. And looking forward to next week. It looks like, the season's been good, for as little hype as it received. I've been enjoying the season. Every time, a medevac comes up, it kind of kills it a little bit. But, then the game pops in, and it's been doing a good job of ramping itself back up. So I've enjoyed the season. I think it's been a good season. I hate the fact that there's a good chance that a medevac is going to happen, and it's just going to take the air out of everything again. But I don't know. We'll see. I hope the season goes strong, and hopefully, the medevac ends up being, Joe. At this point, it's like, Joe. What's Joe doing anyway?
He's a vote, but you hate to see a vote or a medevac this late in the season, because it's one vote now when you're down to 7. One vote is so huge.
Right. Because I think the latest medevac was Eric and Fans vs. Favorites 2 at Final 5.
Yeah. But like I say, this season I started off so on this just because of following up with Kelly and I doing a season, and then Kelly coming up with the following season. I was taking kind of a time out from a little bit of Survivor, so I was kind of in a Survivor withdrawal, I guess. So this season I was very soft on it coming into it. And but like most Survivor seasons, it draws you in. If you watch it long enough, it sucks you in and you can't get back out. So, right,
exactly.
They do a good job about that. They've really built the characters up. So it's going to be interesting to see how it turns out.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. I picked Jason all the way back in the beginning to win the season. And, it's not looking too hot. But in terms of our fantasy teams that we had set up, I got Aubrey and Jason left. So, I got a shot.
Yeah. You got a good shot.
So, and just a quick update for everyone in our fantasy. Myself and my wife's team officially passed Zach and Dylan's team by 1 point this week. Since Scott lost his points for going home with Jason's idol, we ended up passing him by 1. And then Dan and Ben, they're about 60 points down. So they're not looking too hot. They've got Sydney, Michelle, Julia, and Joe, but they've got no confessionals or idols or anything. So they've just had
that's tough.
So they might have a winner in there, but I don't know if it's going to be enough time to make up for it.
Make up the ground? No.
Yeah, I know, because Zach and Dylan, they only got Ty left, so he's their last hope.
Yeah, that's it.
So, but no, we finally passed him. We've been chasing him all season. So I said last season that after last season's disaster of Varner and pre-merge boots galore, we were going to come back with a vengeance. So I'm sticking to it. Hopefully, at this point, Aubrey's going to have to be the one to carry me to a win, because I'm not looking too hot with a Kyle Jason. So
probably not.
Probably not. So moving forward, I guess go Aubrey, Kyle, long shot. But hey, who knows? But all right, looking forward to it. Thanks again for coming on, Dale. Appreciate it.
You betcha.
And maybe in a season or so we can have you back on here. And who knows? We're close enough where we could maybe even do a live show together or something. They're only about 2 hours away.
That's true. We're pretty close. So we'll stay in touch.
Something happen. Absolutely. So appreciate you coming on. Best wishes to you and best wishes to your daughter. And we'll move forward. And so we'll see you guys next week. Thanks again, Dale. Appreciate it. And
thank you, Niko.
End of the broadcast. Deuces. Thanks, guys.